It ain't the left side or the right side, and it must be the fin side. It ain't the left side.
Thank you, Solo D. Welcome to another episode of On the Fin Side here with Kat and Paul. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Spreaker, iTunes, YouTube, iHeartRadio, and Spotify. I am Brian Cat NFL. Paul is fanatic_pick on Twitter. NFL free agency is all but over, even after just 5 days. And what a week it was. And given that people are inside and we're getting real excited about the offseason here and the draft and free agency, we're trying to pump out as many shows as possible just to give you something to listen to as you're cooped up in there. So we're going to do a 7-round mock draft today, and it has one very specific twist. So about a month ago off the air, Paul and I were talking about Joe Burrow and whether or not there's a chance he becomes a Miami Dolphin. I was very adamant that I didn't want to do a show about trading up for Joe Burrow. So we made a deal that if we got to mid-March and we started hearing a few more whispers about the Dolphins and Joe Burrow, then we would do a specific mock draft show and start talking about it a little bit more. So that's what we're going to do. And there is some method to this here. I mean, you look at Jeff Darlington from NFL Network, was South Florida for a long time, said, quote, "The Dolphins love Joe Burrow. They really do." Todd McShay said on ESPN, "The Dolphins love Joe Burrow, and I know that for a fact." And on Joe Burrow's end, the greatest endorsement he's made is that he's just 2 hours from home. And typically, and previously, a lot of these number one overall picks have just gushed at the possibility about being the number one overall pick. Not the case with Joe Burrow so much. Not to say he has to say that, but that's where we are now. So this mock draft is based on the Dolphins trading up from 5 to 1. The specific compensation for that, the Dolphins get the number one pick. Bengals get pick 5 and 18 in this draft, as well as a first and second rounder in the 2021 draft. So a lot of compensation. We feel that might even be a little bit more than what is being talked about out there. So, Paul, I've set this up big time here. I'm going to throw it to you for two questions. Number one, what percentage chance do you think the Dolphins end up, or excuse me, question one, what percent chance do you think the Dolphins pick up the phone and call the Bengals with a realistic trade offer like this? And number two, what percent chance do you think the Dolphins and Bengals actually follow through on a trade that nets the Dolphins Joe Burrow?
I wouldn't be shocked if the Dolphins have already poked the Bengals with a stick a little bit on this, just to get a sense. So I'd say there's probably like a 95% chance they pick up the phone. As far as get a deal done, as it stands right now, 25%, but I think there's a few factors that could influence that.
Got it. I'm not too far off on that. I was going to say 90%, anywhere between 90 and 100%, I think would work. As far as percent chance that it actually gets done, I was going to say 15 to 20%, somewhere in that range, just because at the quarterback position, number one overall pick, it's hard to facilitate a trade down because, man, oh man, if the Bengals, if Joe Burrow turns out to be that type of player, I don't know what's going to happen with the Bengals moving forward. So for both of us, number one, Joe Burrow is that pick. And to dig a little bit deeper into that, and a couple of things that stuck out to me is when the Colts drafted Andrew Luck number one in 2012, they were coming off a 2-14 season. They had just lost Peyton Manning. They had Curtis Painter at quarterback. But the following year, from 2012 to 2014, they were an 11-win football team. And in 2014, they almost got to the Super Bowl. They lost in the AFC Championship game. And Joe Burrow, you can make a point, Paul, when you take everything into account with his college football season last year, that he might have been the best, that he might be the best overall prospect to come out since Andrew Luck in 2012.
You absolutely can. I mean, he's a guy that even before he had this big season, I was staring at, I think last July or August was the first time I brought him up on this show. And in reality, he's a guy who's already left the team close to home to go somewhere where he wanted to win. He's a guy that didn't grow up a fan of the local teams. He grew up a Drew Brees fan of the New Orleans Saints. So it's not like he's looking to go to his hometown team just because they happen to be in the same state as him. And I got news for you. He's going to make the money to fly his dad down to watch any game he wants to, no matter where he ends up. But yeah, no, he absolutely is a smart player, and that is one of the big things that you can see as a pattern that Chris Greer and Brian Flores are chasing this offseason. Intelligent players.
And another thing that sticks out to me as far as Burrow, and obviously he's a fit on the team because he's a quarterback, but I'm not saying the Dolphins are in win now mode. I mean, furthest thing from that. But the players that they signed this offseason, Byron Jones, Emmanuel Agba, Shaq Lawson, Eric Flowers, they're all in that 25 to 27-year-old range. And you got a lot of good players in that range too. Byron Jones is going to be, 28 here in week 2 of the NFL season. Xavier Howard's, 27 and a half. So my point is, if you draft Tua or Jordan Love, you might be talking about 2021 and Byron Jones being 29 and Xavier Howard being 28 before you can even start talking about competing. Where with Joe Burrow, you may be able to hit the ground running and have this solid 3-year window where if things click, the sky's the limit.
Absolutely. It's you look at what the Dolphins have done this offseason. And I'll say the Dolphins aren't in win now mode. Brian Flores is always in win now mode every week. He wants to win. He wants to win now, and he's going to do everything he can to do that. But they're doing that without sacrificing the future, and they've rebuilt this team in such a way. One of the arguments I've heard about moving up is the Dolphins have too many needs. And I know we're going to get to the rest of our picks here, but with the picks that Miami has, without making a single additional trade, by the end of the draft, I'm literally not even looking for needs. And I'm like, I like this guy, because the Dolphins' needs are pretty filled at this point. And you're basically just tweaking, improving, taking a chance on somebody because you can, not because you have to.
Yeah, well said. And as far as this is concerned, if the Dolphins end up with Joe Burrow, yeah, they have other needs, and we're going to address some of these needs here in this mock draft too. But if they land Joe Burrow at that number 1 pick, then I'm willing to live at being a little thin at free safety. I'm willing to live with Jordan Howard at running back, not being great at right guard. Because when you look at the rest of the league, it's you don't see a team with Pro Bowlers stacked at every single position. So I think the pros significantly outweigh the cons, and I think we're on the same page on that. So, Paul, we both took Joe Burrow number 1. The Dolphins then don't have the number 18 pick because of this trade. So the next time they pick, they also still have a first rounder in this scenario at 26. I got them their left tackle, Boise State's Ezra Cleveland. Josh Jones was off the board. In fact, there were 6 offensive tackles off the board at this point. So you're starting to go down to OT7. But I like Ezra Cleveland a lot. I think he's every bit a first rounder. And on my overall Dolphins board, which I'm going to unveil here in the upcoming weeks, I had him as the 17th guy. So he played with turf toe all year, and still in the final 5 games of the season, allowed 0 sacks and 2 pressures. He's a country boy who's also a very good athlete. He's 6'6", 315 pounds, and showed how good of an athlete he was at the combine. Ran a 4.9 40. Might be able to move inside to guard in the off chance that left tackle doesn't work itself out. So he does have some positional versatility. Will start somewhere on the offensive line.
Yeah, and I had a choice to make. I still don't have a first round grade on Ezra Cleveland. I thought about it. Austin Jackson was still on the board. All the other left tackles were off the board for me, unfortunately, at 26. But I went ahead and I went at the safety position. Austin Jackson, just too much of a risk for me, too sloppy, too street ballish. I mean, you watch CK put out a video of him doing a spin move at offensive tackle to go out and try to pick up the edge defender, which was very intriguing to me, something I'd never seen. But he's a hell of an athlete, but he's just too raw for me in this scenario. So I went ahead, I went with Xavier McKinney, the safety out of Alabama. It's immediately plug-and-play starter, goes back there with Bobby McCain and Eric Rowe, and fills that role that, unfortunately, Rashad Jones has been too hurt to fill over the last few years, but also allows you to be able to slide Bobby McCain around in a few scenarios, which I absolutely love.
And at pick number 39, this has caused a lot of good debate when the Dolphins, if they should even take a running back after signing Jordan Howard. I certainly gave them one here. I see 5 running backs as the cream of the crop, and we get one of them here in J.K. Dobbins from Ohio State. The Dolphins snuck him in right before everything was shut down. Had over 2,000 yards, 6.7 yards a carry last year. Elite vision, great patience, a no-nonsense type running back who, unlike a Jonathan Taylor, can also be a big factor in the passing game. Ohio State has ingrained him in their passing attack, and he's also a very good blocker. And that's why I don't see them going after Jonathan Taylor, because I can't see 2 running backs who don't fit in the passing game all that well.
Yeah, and for me, I went ahead and I grabbed the one thing I felt was missing in the defensive signings, the same justification I have for why I thought they should sign Cam Wake, and that's Josh Uche out of Michigan, a guy that we've gushed about since Senior Bowl week on the show here. I think he adds that elite pass rushing ability that we haven't seen on the Dolphins in a couple of years since Cam Wake left, and really can still defend the run if it happens to be a run play. But just the way he's able to get to the passer, and you look at what he did in that Senior Bowl, and Miami's defense now is just it's elite after adding McKinney and Josh Uche.
And at pick 56, we did our mock draft separately, but we came away with the same player. That's TCU right tackle Lucas Niang. Mammoth right tackle prospect at 6'7", 330 pounds, who probably would have been a first rounder if not for a torn labrum this past year. I like Lance Zierlein from NFL.com. I like his comparison of Titus Howard, who the Texans took in the first round last year. So a raw player, big guy. What Brian Flores is going to like about him, too, he only had 3 penalties in almost 2,000 snaps there at TCU. And it allows Jesse Davis to kick inside to right guard. And if Niang is not ready, Jesse Davis could possibly stay out there at that right tackle position.
Yeah, it's Flores has shown, and Chris Greer has shown, that what they're trying to get now on the offensive line are intelligent people movers. Eric Flowers, absolutely a people mover at left guard. We've already talked a little bit about that. You put Niang out at right tackle, he is going to move some bodies out of the way. And as he gets his technique honed a little bit, it's just going to get better from there. I think he's going to be a lockdown player for years at that right tackle spot.
In the 3rd round, 70th pick overall, I have the Dolphins taking Terrell Burgess from Utah. This is a player I think is flying under the radar a lot. A heady, free safety prospect. Only did it at a real high level for 1 year at Utah. Can play man, can play zone, and I'm starting to see a common theme here with my picks where the draft pick strengthens 2 positions. So Lucas Niang, you draft him right tackle, you kick Jesse Davis into right guard there to compete. And at free safety, if Terrell Burgess is up to the task of starting immediately at that safety single high spot, then Bobby McCain's able to play a lot more in nickel and dime roles, which strengthens 2 positions there too.
For me, I went Cam Dantzler, and it may seem like a funny pick given the fact that Miami has Byron Jones and Xavier Howard and Nick Needham. But we've seen over the years you can never have too many good elite cornerbacks. And Cam Dantzler, to me, is a first-round talent that is flying under the radar still at this point. So being able to grab him here in the 3rd round, yeah, he's going to be a backup off the rip. But when you go 5 defensive backs, he and Needham joining the fray in that dime package, it's a no-brainer for me to grab Dantzler, improve that depth, and really have a strong cornerback situation in the pass-happy NFL today.
So to recap, after the first 2 days of the draft in this scenario, we each took 5 players. Paul, obviously quarterback Joe Burrow, safety Xavier McKinney from Alabama, edge rusher, linebacker Josh Uche from Michigan, Lucas Niang from TCU, and cornerback Cameron Dantzler from Mississippi State. My picks were number one, quarterback Joe Burrow. At 26, left tackle Ezra Cleveland. At 39, running back J.K. Dobbins from Ohio State. At 56, right tackle Lucas Niang as well from TCU. And at 70 in the third round, free safety Terrell Burgess from Utah. So now we go into day 3 of the draft. No projected trade-ups here other than the Joe Burrow one. And I came away with a value pick there at the end of the 4th round. Syracuse outside linebacker Alton Robinson. The Dolphins have been trying to get bigger along the edges with these oversized 3-4 outside linebacker types. They signed Shaq Lawson. They signed Emmanuel Ogbah. Now they come back with Alton Robinson. Similar prospect to Jalen Ferguson last year, who was drafted in the 3rd round for the Ravens and is currently starting. Is a versatile edge player, not the most explosive guy, but very productive. When the lights didn't have a great Senior Bowl week, but when the lights were turned on during the game, he came away with 2 sacks.
I went ahead and grabbed Jack Driscoll, a guy we both grabbed in our previous mock draft. He's a guy that can come in, play left or right tackle, is better than anything Miami has on the roster at left tackle today, even though I don't think he's one of those elite left tackles right now that we see go off the board in the 1st round. I don't see a huge difference between him and some of the left tackles that are going to go between the top 5 and the 4th round. He's a guy that can come in, be versatile for you, doesn't preclude you from getting a left tackle where you can, which I do think in this scenario, if Miami trades up for Burrow, they may make a move for Trent Williams. But Jack Driscoll gives you offensive line flexibility, and he can actually play the interior as well. So you've got a lot of options when it comes to grabbing a guy like that in the 4th round, and he can start at a lot of positions for you.
Going down to the 5th round, the Dolphins have 3 picks in this round, 1 in the 6th, and then 3 more in the 7th. So we've got a lot of drafting here still to do. I went with, and it's a pick I expect to be bashed, and Paul made some smart-ass comments before we went on the air here about me liking the punters. And I gave them the best one in the draft, and that's Braden Mann from Texas A&M. I look at Matt Hawk last year. He was 21st in net, 21st in average. He was worse the year before that. And there have just been too many games where Matt Hawk will just shank a punt and it'll completely ruin the field position. We've seen that 3 or 4 games every year over the last 2 or 3 years. I'm tired of it. And Braden Mann has a career average of just under 49 yards a punt. And only one punter in the NFL can say the same thing, and that's Washington Redskins punter Tress Way. And 54% of his punts went over 50 yards. So this is somebody who immediately flips the field position, and I think is worth every bit of the 153rd pick in the draft.
I'm pretty sure you'd grab a punter or a kicker if we had Pete Stoyanovich and Reggie Roby back there. I'm just learning that that's a theme. You kicker every year, punter every year. No, just in all seriousness, I mean, I wouldn't be averse to an upgrade at punter, especially given the number of draft picks Miami has. So I don't hate the pick. For me, I went ahead and grabbed a running back here. I went with Josh Kelly out of UCLA. He ran a 4.49 at the combine, and he is a fantastic fit for that Chan Gailey style of offense. He'll see the field right away in a rotation with Jordan Howard, and he's a guy that makes people miss, but he's got a short, squat, powerful frame at 5'11", 220. So he's an exciting guy. If you get a chance, go out and watch him. To our listeners out there, if you haven't already, he's somebody that can come in and impact the running game and catch some passes out of the backfield.
With my second, 5th round pick, I went with a versatile player from Oregon, a very productive college football player, Calvin Throckmorton. 6'5", 317 pounds. Kind of a guy without a position right now, but has played all 5 offensive line positions at Oregon. He worked out at right tackle at the combine, but it did not go well for him. He was one of the worst athletes there, but given his versatility, might be able to move inside to center. That's going to mask that a little bit more. In a worst case scenario, I think you've got a pretty good backup with this guy.
You do, and it's funny. I was eyeballing Throckmorton, and he went off the board 1 pick before I picked here. But Zack Shackleford, who can play some guard, he's listed as a center out of Texas. He is a big center that I think can develop over time. So if you're not able to re-sign Karras, or Karras doesn't work out since he's just on that 1-year contract, you're grabbing that center that can help you down the stretch. And I think he's going to be a lot better player than his draft position based on the video that I've watched of him out at Texas.
And with the final 5th round pick, I went with Bavarian Roy from Baylor. He was surprisingly not invited to the NFL Draft Combine, but he had a great East-West Shrine Week. He can fill that zero technique nose tackle type of role at 6'1", 336, kind of that Bo Allen, Mike Pennell type of guy who may only play 20 or 25 snaps a game for you, but is going to be able to add some girth in the middle of that defensive line.
Yeah, I went ahead. I added a little more girth to the middle of the offensive line with my last 5th round pick. I went with Tremaine Ankrum, the guard out of Clemson. He's a little power people mover. Ran decently at 5'2" at the combine, but 6'2", 314 adds to that power profile along the offensive line. Will immediately be in competition with Jesse Davis for that right guard spot based on the way that we've worked out this draft as it goes so far. And again, the theme of improving the offensive line, that's the biggest need for Miami if they get their quarterback, is improving the offensive line.
Going down into the 6th round, the Dolphins have 1 draft pick, 185th overall. I went with LSU tight end Stephen Sullivan. He fits really nicely as that 3rd tight end, all-around team player type of guy. The big question is, why wasn't he able to beat out Thaddeus Moss, who is much worse of an athlete than him down there in Louisiana? But I think if you're looking for somebody who can get in there and do and contribute there as a backup, I think Sullivan really does fit the bill. Maybe he pushes Durham Smythe for that 2nd tight end spot.
Yeah, Sullivan's a guy you and I both like, and it's funny you bring up Thaddeus Moss. I went tight end as well. I flirted with the idea of going Thaddeus Moss. I just couldn't convince myself that he's going to be available there in the 6th. He's a weird enigma right now as far as the draft goes, because you'll see him going anywhere from the 3rd round as the 2nd tight end overall to the 7th round in a lot of mock drafts. And I can't make up my own mind on where Thaddeus Moss is going to go. So it's I don't know if part of it was his chemistry with Burrow or what it was, but again, it's and with us drafting Burrow, I did flirt with the idea, but at the end of the day, I went to my old standby at tight end here, somebody I just really, really like, and I think fits the bill perfectly to be a 1-2 punch in Miami right now, and that's Colby Parkinson at tight end, a guy we've talked about extensively on the show so far. 6'7", he's not the fastest guy on the field, but he uses his body so well. You can see his basketball background when he boxes out. And when you've got a 6'7" frame boxing out any defensive back to be able to be the only one that has access to the ball, they're not going to go over you to get the ball without a penalty. And he is a red zone monster. So you go that 2 tight end set with him out there on the field in the red zone, it's going to be just absolutely dirty, and allow Joe Burrow to really rack up a few touchdowns once they get inside the 20.
Going down to the 7th round, Dolphins have 3 picks, 227, 246, and 251. My first one here at 227 is Utah cornerback Javelin Guidry. He's an underclassman, 5'9", 190 pounds, put up some unreal numbers at the combine. Ran a 4.29, also put up a 21 on the bench too. The downfall of it, he's not a very good football player right now. So, but as far as Brian Flores is concerned, if we saw last year with some of the guys that were picked up off the street, the Nate Brookses, the Lyndon Stevens, Tay Hayes. If you get a player like this and he's a moldable piece of clay and he has the physical characteristics, Brian Flores is willing to work with the guy as long as he works hard enough. So that's my first 7th round pick.
For my first 7th round pick, I went ahead and I actually grabbed the guy I grabbed in my last mock draft. I hate doing that, but again, Chris Orr out of Wisconsin is a switchblade at linebacker that you can throw out in pass coverage, but also has the speed and ability to rush the passer. And Flora, and I think he could be an absolute monster on special teams as well. So we've seen Flores likes these type of guys, and I think he's going to be a great fit for Miami.
And I went cornerback again at 246 with some bloodlines here. Javaris Davis from Auburn. He was a last-minute invite to Senior Bowl week. Turned out to be one of the best cornerbacks there. Had two interceptions every year for 4 years. So has some playmaking skills too. Also, he is the cousin of Vontae and Vernon Davis. So has the bloodlines. Hopefully, he doesn't have Vontae's propensity to call grandmama or quit during the middle of a game. But he is somebody with some traits as well.
I went ahead and I grabbed a player out of the U. I grabbed pass rusher, edge defender, Trayvon Hill with my second, 7th round pick. Again, adding to Miami's ability to get to the quarterback. He ran a 4.89 at the combine, and he can really come off the edge in pass rush situations. So again, he's going to be a little bit of a role player right off the rip based on what Miami has on the roster now after free agency. But he's too talented here to pass up in the 7th round.
He's been falling a lot, and he's supposed to be a 2nd or 3rd round pick at one point, and now with a poor offseason, might end up getting to this spot. That would be certainly interesting. My final pick here is going to be running back Patric Taylor out of Memphis. We talked about him a little bit on our running back show. Tony Pauline was talking about him as having a David Johnson look to him, and I think that's real accurate. He might start out the year on PUP, which might force him down to this spot. Wasn't incredibly productive at Memphis, but is somebody with the size and the power to justify this pick, even if he's not going to contribute a whole lot in the first season.
Man, David Johnson like build, huh? Maybe we can trade him for DeAndre Hopkins a 2nd and a 4th if that's the case. Stranger things have happened. I went ahead. I grabbed another edge defender here, Joe Gaziano out of Northwestern. You watch his tape. The guy has some upside, and again, it's low risk, low reward. I think based on both of our drafts, it's Taco Bell and Charles Harris will be out the door, which I'm okay with. They didn't show enough last year to be able to justify it. I'd rather take the upside of a Joe Gaziano at this point.
So that concludes our Joe Burrow-based mock draft here. And let's go through the picks here again. First, Paul, 1st round quarterback Joe Burrow, and then safety Xavier McKinney out of Alabama. 2nd round, edge rusher Josh Uche out of Michigan and Lucas Niang out of TCU, the offensive tackle. 70th in the 3rd round, cornerback Cameron Dantzler out of Mississippi State. 4th round, offensive tackle Jack Driscoll out of Auburn. With the 5th round picks, went with running back Josh Kelly from UCLA, center Zack Shackleford from Texas, and guard Tremaine Ankrum from Clemson. 6th round, tight end Colby Parkinson from Stanford. And then in the 7th round, linebacker Chris Orr from Wisconsin, edge rusher Trayvon Hill from Miami, and edge rusher Joe Gaziano from Northwestern. My picks, 1st round, quarterback Joe Burrow, LSU. Ezra Cleveland, the tackle from Boise State. 2nd round, went with the running back for J.K. Dobbins from Ohio State. Also went in the 2nd round with tackle Lucas Niang out of TCU. 3rd round, safety Terrell Burgess from Utah. 4th round, Alton Robinson, the edge rusher from Syracuse. 5th round picks, punter Braden Mann from Texas A&M. Center Calvin Throckmorton from Oregon, and Bavarian Roy, the defensive tackle from Baylor. 6th round, tight end from LSU, Stephen Sullivan. And then with my 7th round picks, I got 2 cornerbacks, one Javelin Guidry from Utah, Javaris Davis, the cousin of Vontae Davis from Auburn, and finally, as one of the last picks of the draft, running back Patric Taylor from Memphis. So, Paul, taking a look at free agency in the draft, quite a different look from 2019 here.
Yeah, and I think we expected that. Once we knew they were going to have 12 to 14 draft picks and nearly $100 million in cap space, we knew that there was going to be we're going to go with some upgrades across the board. And I really, based on either of our drafts, think Miami could be in a position to make the push this upcoming year, given these drafts, as opposed to being kicking the can down the road for being able to make the push, and they're not sacrificing the future to do so, which that is what I want. I want a consistent, dominant winner as we move forward here. I've been a Dolphins fan for 40 years now. It'll be 41 next Friday. And it's very much a situation where I want to see them be competitive. And this is either of our rosters that we ended up with here. You add that to the free agency bit, and these are teams that can come out and compete. And that's what I love.
Yeah, and Joe Burrow, again, if the Dolphins are able to pull it off, regardless of the draft picks that it costs, you're talking about a team that might hit the ground running a lot quicker than if they draft Jordan Love or Tua, because we might be talking about quarterbacks that are, at best case scenario, are ready to take off in 2021, probably even later than that. So that's going to do it for our break.
One thing I just want to add before we wrap up here is, there's a couple of things that can really factor into improving that percentage of a chance to get Joe Burrow. For one, Chris Greer, Brian Flores, use one of your video conference calls on Joe Burrow if you can. Show him not only what you've done, which we know he knows about because he's liking what Miami's doing as far as selecting players, if you look out on Twitter. Show him what the Bengals have done with their three big names they've added. That's it, and show him a little bit of your draft plan. Tell him how you plan to use him and build around him. He's a guy that wants to be competitive. He wants a team that's doing the win now things. And if you can get him on board with wanting to come to Miami and against what the Bengals are doing, it gets a whole lot easier to do the things that you want to do, because the Bengals at the end of the day don't have enough draft ammunition to fill their needs. They don't have enough cap space to fill their needs. And you're basically going to try to get the Bengals in a position where they're trying to sell Joe Burrow something he doesn't want. And if you can do that, that improves that chance of going up to get this guy.
Yeah, and for our listeners too, Paul and I have said at the beginning that what do I put the chance at of the Dolphins actually getting Burrow? I put it at 15%. Paul was up in that 25% rate. So we think the odds are very, very strong this isn't going to happen. But what a lot of people are saying out there in the Dolphins community is that, well, we have so many other needs. Well, we showed that you could trade up, give up more than what's being projected, and you can still fill a lot of these holes here in the 2020 NFL Draft. And that's going to do it for our breakdown of our 7-round Joe Burrow-based mock draft with the projected trade-up. I'm Brian Cat NFL. Paul is Fanatic_pick. You can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Spreaker, iTunes, YouTube, iHeartRadio, and Spotify. I'm Brian Cat NFL, and Paul is Fanatic_pick. I think I said that already, but anyway, Paul, we can edit that out or not. I don't care.
It's so nice. You got to say it twice.
You betcha. Fun times ahead here. Hopefully this is causing a very good distraction here for our listeners out there. And if it's not on the right side and it's not on the left side, it is on the fin side. Solo D, take us home.
It ain't the left side or the right side, and it must be the fin side. Inside. It ain't the left side or the right side, and it must be the fin side. Listen, Dolphins fans across the land all tuning in to see what Brian Cat